When we stand before a Renaissance painting, we often see a beautiful scene. We might see a portrait, a religious story, or a moment from mythology. The colors are rich. The figures look real, almost alive. But there is so much more happening than what first meets the eye. These masterpieces are not just pretty pictures. They are complex puzzles, filled with secrets and hidden messages. The artists who created them were not just painters, they were brilliant storytellers. They used a special language, a language of symbols, to communicate ideas that were deeply important to the people of their time. To truly understand their work, we must learn to read this forgotten language. Symbolism in art is the practice of using objects, figures, or colors to represent abstract ideas or concepts. It is a visual shorthand for a bigger story. Think of it like a secret code. A simple object, like a flower or a piece of fruit, is not just there for decoration. It carries a specific meaning, one that the original viewers would have understood instantly. This was a world where literacy was not widespread, so images had to do the heavy lifting of communication. An artist could tell a complex tale about faith, morality, or power without using a single written word, embedding it all within the visual fabric of the canvas itself. This visual vocabulary was incredibly powerful. It allowed painters to add layers of meaning to their work, creating a richer and more profound experience for the viewer. A painting of the Virgin Mary, for example, was never just a portrait of a woman with a baby. Every element in the composition was carefully chosen to reinforce her purity, her divinity, and her role in the Christian story. The artists were theologians and philosophers with a paintbrush, using their immense skill to translate complex doctrines and beliefs into images that could inspire devotion, teach a moral lesson, or declare the status of the person who paid for the painting. Consider the world in which these artists lived. It was a time of great change, but also a time when faith and tradition were the bedrock of society. People's lives were intertwined with religious narratives and classical myths. They saw the world as a place where the divine was present in the everyday. Therefore, when they looked at a painting, they were prepared to see more than just a surface reality. They were looking for connections to the sacred stories they knew so well. The artists knew their audience and crafted their works to speak directly to this shared understanding, making each painting a conversation between the creator, the subject, and the spectator. Let's look at some common examples. Flowers were one of the most popular tools in the artist's symbolic toolkit. The white lily, for instance, appears constantly in scenes of the Annunciation, where the angel Gabriel tells Mary she will bear the Son of God. The lily's pure white petals were a universal symbol of Mary's virginity and purity. In another painting, you might see a red carnation. This flower often symbolized love, particularly divine love or the promise of marriage, making it a frequent guest in engagement portraits. By placing these flowers in a scene, the artist wasn't just decorating a room. He was making a clear statement about the character or the event being depicted. Animals also carried heavy symbolic weight. A dog, especially when shown in a portrait of a married couple, was rarely just a pet. It was a well-understood symbol of fidelity, loyalty, and marital faithfulness. You can see this in Jan van Eyck's famous Arnolfini portrait, where a small griffon terrier stands attentively at the couple's feet. On the other hand, a cat was often associated with betrayal or temptation. A snake, drawing from the story of Adam and Eve, almost always represented evil, sin, or the devil. These weren't subtle hints. They were clear signposts, guiding the viewer's interpretation of the scene and the moral standing of the figures within it. Even inanimate objects were packed with meaning. A skull, known as a memento mori, a reminder of death, was a powerful symbol. It warned the viewer that life is short and that one should focus on spiritual matters. You often see it in paintings of saints who have retreated from the world or on the desks of scholars and princes. A piece of fruit could also tell a story. An apple would immediately bring to mind the original sin in the Garden of Eden. A pomegranate, with its many seeds, could represent the resurrection or the unity of the church. Every object was a potential piece of the narrative puzzle. This language of symbols created a deeply interactive experience. A painting was not something to be passively observed but actively deciphered. Viewers would scan the canvas, identifying the symbols and piecing together the layers of meaning. It was a mental and spiritual exercise. An orange sitting on a windowsill might not just be an orange, it could signify wealth, as they were expensive imports, or even allude to the Medici family, whose emblem included oranges. The artists expected this level of engagement and they rewarded the careful observer with a richer, more complete understanding of their artistic and intellectual vision. The entire painting became a testament to both artistic skill and scholarly knowledge. So why did Renaissance artists go to all this trouble to hide messages in their paintings? One primary reason was religion. The church was the most powerful institution and the largest patron of the arts. Paintings were a crucial tool for teaching the Bible to a largely illiterate population. Symbols provided a clear and memorable way to communicate complex theological ideas. The story of Christ's sacrifice, the virtues of the saints, and the dangers of sin could all be vividly illustrated through a shared visual language. These weren't hidden messages in the sense of being secret, but rather a way to enrich the primary narrative and make it more spiritually potent for the faithful. Patronage was another major driver. The wealthy merchants, princes, and popes who commissioned these works of art wanted the paintings to say something about them. They wanted to show off their wealth, their learning, their piety, or their political power. An artist could flatter a patron by including symbols of their family, their trade, or their virtues. For example, a portrait of a banker might include a ledger and coins to signify his profession, but also a dog to emphasize his loyalty, and an open window to suggest his connection to the wider world of commerce. These symbols were a form of visual branding, cementing the patron's status for all to see. Sometimes the messages were more subtle, perhaps even political. In a time of shifting alliances and social upheaval, a painting could be a safe way to express a political opinion or declare allegiance. An artist might include the emblem of a certain powerful family to show support, or use symbols to subtly critique a rival. This was a dangerous game, and the ambiguity of symbolism provided a useful shield. If accused, an artist or patron could plausibly deny any hidden political meaning, claiming the object was simply part of the scene. This allowed for a layer of communication that was understood by the intended audience but could be denied to hostile outsiders. Finally, artists used symbolism to demonstrate their own intellect and skill. The Renaissance was a time of renewed interest in classical learning, philosophy, and science. A truly great artist was expected to be more than just a craftsman. He was a humanist scholar. By weaving complex allegories and obscure references into their work, artists like Botticelli, Leonardo, and Raphael proved their erudition. These complex paintings were a challenge to the viewer, especially to other educated elites. Deciphering the painting was a mark of one's own learning, and creating it was a testament to the artist's genius, elevating the status of the painter from a mere artisan to a celebrated intellectual. Understanding this symbolic language fundamentally changes how we look at Renaissance art. A painting that once seemed like a straightforward depiction of a historical or religious event suddenly transforms into a rich, multi-layered narrative. It's like discovering a secret diary hidden within the pages of a history book. Each object, each gesture, each color choice becomes a clue. We move from being passive admirers of beauty to active detectives, piecing together the story the artist so carefully constructed centuries ago. This process of discovery is incredibly rewarding and brings us closer to the mind of the creator. This deeper engagement allows us to appreciate the sheer genius of the Renaissance masters on a whole new level. We realize that their brilliance was not only in their technical ability to render lifelike figures and create convincing perspective, it was also in their intellectual capacity to orchestrate these complex symbolic programs. They were masters of composition in every sense of the word, arranging not just forms and colors, but also ideas and beliefs. Seeing how they integrated dozens of symbolic meanings into a single, harmonious image without it feeling cluttered or forced reveals the true depth of their artistry and intellectual prowess. Furthermore, looking for these hidden meanings connects us more directly to the people of the past. When we recognize a symbol and understand its meaning, we are sharing a piece of knowledge with someone who lived over 500 years ago. We are looking at the world for a moment through their eyes. We get a glimpse into their values, their fears, their hopes, and their faith. The art ceases to be a remote object in a museum and becomes a bridge across time, a direct communication from a world that is gone but not entirely lost. It makes history feel personal and immediate. So, the next time you find yourself in front of a Renaissance masterpiece, do not just glance at it. Look closer. Ask questions. Why is that specific flower in the vase? What is the significance of the little dog at her feet? What does the fruit on the table mean? Let your curiosity guide you. By searching for these hidden symbols, you unlock a richer, more profound experience. You will discover that these silent canvases have been speaking for centuries, waiting for us to learn their language. The reward is a deeper, more meaningful appreciation for some of the greatest achievements in the history of art.